Well, welcome back to this week's study on the Sermon on the Mount. We took a little break for Easter, and hopefully all of you celebrated the Lord's resurrection in a good style and remembered how grateful we should be for all he's done for us in his life and suffering and his resurrection. But now we look at this last one of the Beatitudes. So join with me as we look at Matthew 5:10 through 12. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil things against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven, for in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. On February 12th, 2015, the Islamic State beheaded 21 Coptic Christians. There was a 5-minute video of the execution that was released on February 15th. Reportedly, the ones who were martyred were given the opportunity to renounce their faith, their Christian faith, but they refused, knowing that the only other option was for them to die. And that video highlighted what has been the bloodiest century for Christianity since Christianity began from the time of Jesus. A fairly recent report from Newsweek magazine says that the Roman Catholic Church reported that, let me read it. The report examined the plight of Christians in China, Egypt, Eritrea, India, Iran, Iraq, Nigeria, North Korea, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Sudan, Syria, and Turkey over the period lasting from 2015 until 2017. The research showed that in that time, Christians suffered crimes against humanity and some were hanged or crucified. The report found that Saudi Arabia was the only country where the situation for Christians did not get worse, and that was only because the situation couldn't get any worse than it already was. Persecution, my friends, is very real. It's happening not just in the countries that I mentioned, but in many other countries. And it is, again, an everyday reality for many of our fellow believers. And some of you are living in countries that listen to this video, are living in countries where persecution could break out at any moment, and it has. And we want you to know, before we go any further, before we say another word, that we are praying for you, and that we want you to know that although we can't come and rescue you from this, that we know that you are like the storm clouds behind me, that you are in a storm, and that our prayers are with you. And we hope that when we're called upon to suffer, if we are, that we can stand as bravely and as true to the faith as you have. You are an example to us, and we thank God for you. Well, let me just get into the study now a little bit. Now, we need to be careful and understand that not everything that happens to Christians is the kind of persecution that Jesus was talking about in these verses. It isn't suffering for Christ because of your political views. So let's be careful about that. It isn't suffering for Christ if people don't like you because you are obnoxious, or if you have a personality conflict with somebody else. That's not persecution. It is not persecution if people dislike you because you are tall or short or too thin or overweight or male or female or one of 100 other things, because of your skin color or anything else. That is not persecution in the way that Jesus was talking about. It can be upsetting and it can be unfair. I'm not saying that it isn't. And it can make us feel badly. We're not saying it's right, but that is not the persecution Jesus was talking about. Those who are not Christian people have to deal with those kinds of things as well. The persecution that Jesus is talking about has to do with what we suffer because of our stand as a believer in Christ. In the Western world, where most of us live anyway, that would see this video, it's common for Christians to be the butt of jokes or derision on television or in the media. In fact, I've got a picture here of a senator who just very recently told people that he was very glad that he has a Christian girlfriend. And the media went crazy in the United States making fun of him because he said he had a Christian girlfriend. Now, isn't that just pretty sad? Well, but compared to the severity of the suffering in other parts of the world, as I just mentioned earlier, it's ridiculous to compare that kind of us being uncomfortable with this persecution that's going on. We need to understand that when we live for Christ, we are placed at odds with not just the world as a whole, important to remember, but worldly Christians. There are Christians who have compromised their faith. And this is more the problem in the Western world, who have compromised their faith. And they don't like it when Christians take a stand for Christ and take a firm stand for Christ, and they will join unbelievers in saying to us, calm down, back off. You're being too goody-goody or whatever. Well, and we need to remember, who were Jesus' worst enemies? It wasn't the Romans. It wasn't the unbelievers. It was the believers, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and so on and so forth. They were the ones who said they believed in God because they didn't like the way Jesus was saying things. Sometimes the ones who are the worst enemies are the ones who look a lot like us. Now, the world would like for Christians to be empty-headed and what we call mealy-mouthed, or at least in my part of the country, which means you just don't say anything worthwhile, soft-spoken, inoffensive, someone who blesses everything and stands against nothing. It's a toothless Christianity that they would like. They would prefer that rather than a robust witness. Sadly, we see such witnesses too often, and we see ones who stand for Christ less and less. James Boyce, who passed away a few years ago, said this. He said, "The world has become tolerant of us, but we have become more tolerant of the world." That stings a little bit. And George B. Smith, Salvation Army writer from the past, said, "A wolf will not worry a painted sheep. A cat will not seize a toy mouse, nor will the world persecute a counterfeit Christian." If we're not standing for Christ, we'll not be persecuted, but nor will we be saying anything that really matters. The persecution Jesus talked about was specifically, again, because we have taken our stand for him. If we live our lives as Christ intends us to, it is inevitable that we will come into conflict with those who have different values and beliefs. That's just the way it is. We will not have to seek persecution. It will find us. A holy life is a rebuke to the world. When the world says eat, drink, and be merry, the believer says that life is more than food or drink. When the world says live it up, the believer counters with the claim that this life is lived against the claims of eternity. When the world says we should put ourselves first, the believer says Christ must be first and we must deny ourselves. We need to be careful how we characterize those, however, who are outside the faith. We need not to be known just as people who are anti-communist or anti-gay or anti-white or anti-anything. If we take that kind of stance, we put up walls. We need to realize that all men, all women, all people of all races and all kinds of sexual orientations are sinners, and in need of God's grace, no matter who they are. We don't seek to change people's labels, but bring them to a transforming knowledge of Jesus Christ. Let him change them. Then the Lord will not change them, but whatever else will be taken care of. When persecution comes, as it will for the true child of God, is more is to be more than tolerated and endured. Jesus said, in fact, strangely, rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. It's strange to think that you're supposed to be so positive about something that is painful and difficult when it's directed at us. It just is. In fact, in some ways, persecution is the authentication of what we believe. No faith can be known, and you can't know how strong your faith is until it is tested. Just like you can't know how strong steel is until it is tested, until it's under stress. And so we will know how strong our faith is when it is tested. And that comes with things like persecution. E. Stanley Jones, the great a missionary, wonderful missionary to India, said, "But even if death should come," he said, "I am like the bird on the twig of the tree when the storm tries to shake it off. All right," the bird says to itself, "shake me off. I've still got wings." If the haters marshal their forces in a charge against us, any pain they inflict is swallowed up in the victory that we have in Jesus Christ. And how shall we regard those who direct their worst against us? Well, again, another voice from the past, well, Jesus said we're to love our enemies, didn't he? Yes, he did. And John Wesley added to that, "Let your actions show that you are as genuine in love as they are in hatred." Yeah, that's a good one too. Finally, we owe our enemies our prayers. They attack us because they need the full indwelling of Christ in their lives. They are lost. And unlike those who persecuted for righteousness' sake, unlike us, we have a hope. We have a promise. They have no future. Their future is bleak. They are lost. And they're going to be lost because they don't have Christ. All they have is this life. It is done for them. That's it. It's over. But we who have Christ have everything ahead of us. We have a future that gets brighter and brighter and brighter. Yes, we may endure the storm, but there's for us a calm after the storm. For those who persecute, for those who are without Christ and persecute, the storm is ahead of them and there is no release for them. Listen, friends, if you're going through persecution, know that we're praying for you. And for those of us who are not in a place where persecution is directed against us, as it is severely in other places, we owe them our prayers. And I hope that after you finish this video, you'll take a moment and pray for our brothers and sisters right now who are facing persecution in many, many places in the world. Think about that. God bless you.